Amari Niblack. Let's talk about the tight end position just really quickly. Amari Niblack, 6'4", 233. And he is a ridiculous athlete. There's a thing called the GAS stat, and it's game athletic score. Basically, they use GPS tracking and they track your every movement in games. And they give you an athletic score based on that GPS tracking data. And they have him in the 99.9th percentile of athleticism for tight ends, their game athletic score, their GAS stat. He reached over 20 miles per hour in top speed last year at one point. Hey, might have did it against Texas. Maybe he had a long run against Texas, that touchdown. Um, he's actually now he's 11 of his 20. He had 11 of his 20 receptions in 2023, went for 15 plus yards. So he's a down the field threat, and there's no doubt. I think that's what he's going to bring to the table for Texas. He's not a great blocker. He's probably 20 lowest graded run blockers for a tight end. I think that comes from that was a stat from Pro Football Focus in terms of their grades. And he's not JT Sanders, so he's not well-rounded. He's not a five-tool tight end. But he does have one elite trait for a tight end, and that's his speed and his ability to to take the top, to really hit the seam and take the top off a defense from the tight end position. So I think that's how he's going to be used. I think between him and Gunnar Helm, I believe they're going to try to money ball a 5-tool tight end. I think Amari Niblack's going to have like 2 of those tools, and Gunnar Helm will have 3 of those tools, and together they'll be a 5-tool tight end. But my guess would be this season, you'll see a little less 12 personnel, which is traditional 1-back 2 tight ends, just a little bit less of the 12 personnel. And I think he'll supplement with some other packages like the pony package, which I've talked about, your two tailback sets, and the big 11 Big 12 package, which is your 6 O-line package. And I think you'll see, like Sark does every year, when he tries to weaponize a position of strength on his team, right? You had the best running back room in the country, so he decided, let's play more 2 tailback sets. I want Rojo and Bijan on the field at the same time. Genius, right? Even if somebody had been calling for that even when Tom Herman was here. But I won't pat myself on the back too much. But Sark saw it, so good for him. He had one of the deepest offensive lines in college football because you had very little attrition there, and you've been stockpiling these guys. You've brought back at least four starters the last 2 years. So you've had veterans starting O-line and stockpiling with some of the best O-line classes in recruiting in the country with the Pancake Factory. Shout out to the BMDs, big money boosters and donors. But you were able to stockpile that talent, and he decided, let's bring in Big 11, Big 12 packages where we have 6 O-linemen on the field to use more of those guys. At first it was Andre Carrick, and now it's Malik Agbo. And I think now with the luxury you have at wide receiver, with the embarrassment of riches you have there, with potentially going 6 deep at wide receiver at Alabama when he had a really deep and talented wide receiving core, 4 first-round wide receivers on one team. He used that 10 personnel package, the red package, he called it, 1-back 0 tight ends with all 4 of those wide receivers on the field. And here at Texas, I think you can do something very similar with now you don't have 4 first-round wide receivers. I'm not saying that. I do think you have a lot of I think that's one of your positions of strength. And Sark has shown the tendency to weaponize a position of strength, talented depth. And I just gave you a few examples. I think he'll do it again, but some personnel grouping has to be sacrificed, or at least some of the usage of those personnel groupings has to be sacrificed. So you can bring in a new one. And if you're going to bring in some 10 personnel, which I think has been about 1% or less than 1% of your personnel groupings last year, because you just don't use it at all. I think, just taking that 5% from your 12 personnel usage and adding that to a new one could really help you tremendously. Could add a lot of more variety to the offense. So tight end, even though this year I think you're going to see Amari Niblack, you're going to see Gunnar. I'm not saying that they're going to be their roles are going to be reduced to that significantly, but I do think even though Sark loves tight ends, says the second most important position in his offense behind quarterback, it's not necessarily a matchup nightmare it was when you had JT Sanders there, your tight end position. Amari Niblack presents some challenges, but it makes your offense predictable because I know he's going to be a pass receiver 80% of the time. You don't want him in there as a run blocker because he's not great at it. You don't want him there as a pass blocker because he's not great at it. Same thing with Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm's much better and much capable and more competent as a blocker, but he doesn't necessarily present a threat downfield that can be great at contested catches and beating man-to-man like JT Sanders could or like an Amari Niblack can. So you know what I mean? The tools they have elite traits, but they're isolated, and you don't have them together in a combination like you did with JT Sanders. So I think ultimately less 12 personnel, even though you're between 25 and 40% since Sark has been there, depending on what year you're talking about. Last year, you saw less of it. I think you were close to 30% because you're seeing more of the Big 12, Big 11 packages. So Sark is playing less of the traditional 12. He loves 11. 11 is his baby. There'll always be 50% 11 personnel. But this year, I think you add 10 personnel. That's my guess. That you see a slight increase. Maybe nothing crazy. About 5% of your usage. That's nothing. But when you're allocating that, the personnel pie of personnel groupings, 50% is already taken to 11 personnel. It always will be. And then you start from there, dividing it up after 12 personnel, which is your second most popular personnel grouping, and then into the exotic looks, Big 11, Big 12, your pony package, that kind of stuff.